calling the meeting of the ad hoc committee to review county board rules to order. A physical quorum of the members is not present. However, pursuant to Section 7E of the Open Meetings Act, members are permitted to attend remotely. Either one member of the committee, the chief administrative officer, or our chief legal counsel are physically present at the meeting location. In-person attendance and public comments are allowed, subject to attendance limitations required to ensure the health and safety of those who attend. So pursuant to the Illinois Attorney General's guidance to public bodies on the Open Meetings Act during the COVID-19 pandemic dated July 2nd, 2020, county board members may participate without being physically present in compliance with the established provisions. So all that means is today we have the requisite people in the room. We have members from, we are Assistant State's Attorney, we have staff members, and thank you to Member Eckhoff for being there in the room too. And then every and any vote, which luckily today it doesn't seem we have any, would be roll call. Can we have a roll call, please?
Chaplin.
Here.
Dessert.
Here.
Eckhoff.
Here.
Hart.
Here.
Selman.
Here.
Zay.
Here.
Great, thank you everyone. Do we have any public comment?
No public comment.
Okay, great. Next item is Chairwoman's remarks. I just first wanted to thank our chairman and other members, especially Member Chaplin, for the inspiration creation of this committee. I know there's been many talk over the last few years, especially during my tenure, of we got to look at the schedule, we got to look at how these things work. So I just wanted to note that this is the second time since the beginning of COVID that this board has taken time to work on these sorts of issues. The first time we had an ad hoc discussion of the size of our board, and now we're having a discussion of the county board rules. And I think it's just something we can all be proud of, that we are continuing to be invested in good governance and the daily operations of our body, even amidst these emergency situations that we're in with COVID. Just like the last ad hoc meeting I was honored to run, this will follow a very similar format. This first meeting today will be any and all ideas you have. And really, in essence, the next week, as I'm sure you guys will kind of replay this meeting over in your heads and have some ideas. We want to make sure we are looking at any and all items so that we can do some good research and compare it to our peers before making any final decisions. I want to introduce our staff who will be assisting us. Jason Blumenthal, if you can just give a little wave back there. I know it's still hard to see faces. Jason's our new member of the county board staff, and he'll be assisting us here. And then Assistant State's Attorney Nicholas Alfonso, I think I said it right. Great, yeah. Thank you. So Nick is here to help us as well. That concludes my remarks. I notice we have approval of minutes, and it's probably my touch that we don't have minutes to approve, so we will move on from that, and apologies for my end on not catching that earlier. Starting with our discussion item, the first item we're going to do is we're going to review the PowerPoint that Jason's put together of us to look at our peer collar counties. And then the next item, I want to open it up to discussion to kind of just go through our rules item by item. I mean, obviously not every item needs discussion, but just go through the rules to sort of draw on the areas where we really want to dive deep. So with that, Jason, I'll hand it off to you.
Give me 1 second to get this pulled up. Okay, as Chair Selman has indicated, I just put together a quick little brief, some comparables of just some topics that she thought would be relevant to today's conversation. There's 3 counties we picked, Will County, Lake County, and McHenry County, and that was because those were the rules that were readily available online to do some comparisons. So we're going to start with Will County. Give me 1 second to minimize this so I can actually see the PowerPoint. Will County, population 640,000. I'm not going to read through all this, but some key things that to note, officer positions they have is the county executive, county board speaker, the majority leader, minority leader, majority whip, and minority whip. In addition, there is a Republican and Democratic caucus. Rules for them with public comment. They allow 2 minutes per person to come and talk before them. There is no specific electronic attendance policy set out by them. And they have 8 different standing committees, executive committee, finance, public works, and so on. So that's just a brief comparison that I'm sure we're going to reference back to some of these throughout our actual discussion. So I won't go too too into depth here. Next is Lake County. They have a 21 county board member group where each representing their own district. Their chair is elected amongst them, amongst the elected board. Their positions are county board chair, county board vice chair, and they have a parliamentarian. Public comments as a whole should equal 30 minutes, and everyone has 3 minutes to speak. The chair and parliamentarian share the duties of enforcing that 3-minute time period. They do have a attendance policy that's in accordance with what the governor's order of disaster and then also whatever the Open Meetings Act would allow. They have 9 different standing committees, a rules committee, financial and administrative is key. They also have a committee of the whole meeting that occurs the Friday before a county board meeting. McHenry County, they have 24 board members, 4 members for the 6 districts. The officers they have is county board chairman, county board vice chairman, and they have a parliamentarian who is actually a non-board member. I would have to look into it more to find out who that is at this current moment. But their public comment rules are 30 minutes maximum and 3 minutes per person, and the chair is the one who enforces those rules. They have, their attendance policy isn't specific to the disaster. It's for individual members who maybe cannot attend for work or business or personal matter. The voting members can actually allow them for that attendance, but there's nothing specific for a disaster release. And they have 6 standing committees. So with that, that's all I had as a brief comparable. If anyone had any questions to that, I can assist with that. If not, we can move on to what you need.
Sure, Member Hart?
Thank you, Chair Solomon. I just have a quick question around the committee structures of those other counties that we talked about and how they align with the organization structure of those counties. If you don't have the answer, that's completely fine, but I'm curious to see how those align because, you know, right now we talk about the redundancy of our committees, but for the most part, our committees line up with the departments that exist. There's a transportation department, we have a transportation committee, public works department, public works committee. It seems like the other counties have a lot more streamlined in terms of the number of committees, but just curious to see how that relates to how their organization is designed.
I think
Definitely
that's
look into that.
helpful. Yeah, I think that that's a good thing to remember ourselves as we're looking at different rules to be comparison to also get the org structures. I think that's a great idea. Are there any other questions on this section? Yeah, Member Chaplin.
Yeah, thank you. So as long as we're talking about committee, the number of committees, and I think Member Zay might have a little insight into this as well. Many years ago, the board members were paid an additional stipend to chair committees. So, you know, maybe the reason we have 16 committees compared to some of these other ones that have 9 and 8 is because they were trying to give everybody that little extra stipend, or a lot of the board members, each board member then got a little bit of extra pay. I don't know if that's true or not, but, you know, because although we have, I'm sure all of these other counties have a Department of Transportation and a Public Works Department, and I'm sure they all have the same departments that we have, but they've consolidated their committees, and I think it's something that we really need to look at.
Thank you. Yeah, go
Chairman
ahead, Member
Salmon,
Zay.
yeah, can I respond? Yeah, I mean, we had less committees. I think the problem was at one point we had 24 board members. It seemed like the senior board members were getting the committees, and that the newer board members weren't getting as many committees, and the committees were going longer. And, you know, some board members are only on 1 or 2 committees, and they just didn't feel that was right. So I think along with the stipend that was put up, because committee chairmen do more work than just normal committee members, it was expanded. And I think at that point, you know, and then we've got the board then was reduced. So, you know, I think it's a play on there. I think some committees, you know, need to be looked at. You know, some committees are by statute, like stormwater, you know, that have to be municipal members. But, you know, I think that was the problem, was that you had more senior board members that were getting the committees, and other newer board members weren't getting any committees at all, which I think is an issue.
All right, thank you. I think that background's really helpful. So if there are no more questions just on that brief presentation, I'd like to move on to just going through our rules and trying to find the areas where we want to dig deeper on. So Jason, if you could throw up our board rules and just take us to page 1. And then while everyone's getting started on that, so section 1 covers the county board meetings. Section or subsection A is on regular meetings. And the first item I thought we might want to discuss is item 3 there with our rules on evening meetings. I know we've discussed this sort of on and off throughout the years. So I wanted to open up discussion is do we want to decide that maybe once a quarter we do evening meetings? Do we want to leave it as it is so we simply have the option for when the time is right? Does anyone have any specific feedback on that? Member Chaplin?
Yeah, thank you. So, I know when we were talking about reducing the size of the board, there's a lot of pushback because people said then you're going to limit the amount of diversity on that board. The best way I think to get a diverse board is to possibly hold our meetings in the evening when that allows more people to run for county board, and it allows more people to attend the board meetings and participate in our county government. So, as far as, evening meetings and a diverse board, I think even more than keeping the board at 18 members that we have, I think moving to maybe evening meetings would really open us up to having, a more diverse board.
Member Hart? And then Member Zay, I see you after.
Thank you very much, Member Selman. I agree with Member Chaplin completely. Member Selman, I know this is something you and I have talked about. Having the board meetings during the day, not to mention on a Tuesday. I'd love to talk about the day a week that we're having these board meetings on as well. Don't want to rock the boat too much, but the time of day is very much a prohibitor from a lot of professionals or anyone else that may have a more difficult family schedule from running for county board. So I would support the move to exclusive evening meetings. At a minimum, I think even though we had low attendance from the public at large, we have to think about how this impacts the board members, and I would fully support looking at that change.
All right, Member Zay next, then I see Member to start after.
Yes, thank you. I brought up when I first ran night meetings, and we did start night meetings way back when in about 2000, and no one showed up to the night meetings. And I think our biggest concern is how is that going to affect our staff? I mean, we have people that are coming in at 7:30 in the morning. I mean, and then are we going to have them take those days off? Then they're not doing their job during the day. So I think that's something that has to be looked at as staff time. I mean, I don't think you can expect your staff to come in and do a full day till 4:30, then have them come back and start committee meetings. I mean, how do you do committee meetings then at night? I mean, when do you start a county board meeting? So, I mean, I'm up for having night meetings, but it's not as easy as you think because it talks about staff time. And then when you're talking about committee meetings, do you do committee meetings at night still so people can attend, or how do you do your committee meetings? Do you do them during the day, which then goes against the whole premise of doing night meetings for other people to be able to be board members. So it's a very, has to be thought out, because then you would have to change your whole structure and your committee structure, and then how you would have to have your meetings. So I assume if you're having night meetings, you'd have to have committee meetings at night, which we tried to do back then, but you're starting your committee meetings at 5:30. I mean, what's the toll it's going to be on your staff? So it's something to discuss, but we have to think of the staff at that point.
Thank you. Member to start, and then I saw Member Chaplin. And I'm sorry, Grant, if you have a comment in the room and I don't call on you, yell or something. I'm not trying to ignore you, but I just haven't seen yet. Go ahead, Member to start.
Thank you. I think that Chairman Cronin gave us a huge responsibility to go through these rules. I don't know when they were looked at last, but I know that it hasn't been for quite a while. And I don't want to do this fast. I want to do this right. I don't do anything halfway. And I think that the 4 meetings that are scheduled to go over these rules, too few. I think we should be talking about these rules and going line by line. Having said that, we can change these rules any way we want. Like for number 3, evening meetings, I don't know why an evening meeting must convene at 7 o'clock. It could convene at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock. But I do like the idea of giving evening meetings not every week, obviously, but a couple of times a year to give people the opportunity to come in and if they're not able to during the day, to talk to the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Desart. Member Chaplin, did you have another comment?
Yeah, thank you so much, Chair Selman. With regards to how we would handle evening meetings, maybe we can reach out to our municipal counterparts because they do meetings, evening meetings all the time. Their staff, they have the same staff, that we do. And, you mentioned, because I know when I was on the Water Commission, like you're the chair of that committee, we did start committee meetings like at 5:30, then we started meeting at 7 or 7:30, or sometimes committee meetings started at 5. But other government entities are able to manage it. And I don't know if the staff took half a day off and came in later on board meeting days and committee days. But maybe, just to get an idea, and not saying we're going to do it this year, but just to look into it, maybe we can, check with some of our municipal counterparts and see how they manage to do that.
Thank you. I think that's a great idea. So how about our next step? Oh, sorry. Member Eckhoff, please go ahead.
We've started to have finance meetings at 8, and then we've got county board at 10, and then sometimes we're going to 2, 3, 4 in the afternoon. So, we're going to be going to 2, 3 in the morning. I'm not sure that's something you might want to see how finance and county board are going to be going the next 6 months before you make any changes. And then, like Jim said, we have had meetings at night. It hasn't increased attendance, so I think you got to go all day or all night. And I'm just worried about night meetings. I was on the city council in Wheaton for 14 years, and rarely do we go past midnight, but sometimes we did. But if we're going to start going with 2-hour finance and 4-hour county board meetings, then I think we got to keep it during the day, or else you're going to be here till 2 in the morning.
Thank you. So I think I agree with Member Chaplin about getting some peer information. So let's look at what the other county boards, when they meet. Let's also look at the municipalities in DuPage, because I know a lot of them do meet late. And then I know Nick, I think, was asking the department heads for general updates for their committees, but let's also add to have him ask what their concerns would be about evening, whether that's committee or county board. I do think the ability for them to zoom in makes it a little better. And I would also be interested in how other areas flex staff time, because I don't want changes we make to result in department heads going from 50-hour weeks maybe to 60-hour weeks because we want to meet in the evenings. So if that's all the points on that, I didn't have anything else noted on this page. Was there anything else that the members wanted to look at on this page? Member Hart?
Yeah, I don't know if it's covered elsewhere in the rules, but Member Selman, you brought up a point that I think is related to the discussion we had on evening meetings, and that's our policy beyond the emergency declaration of remote participation. Going back to what Member Chaplin mentioned, I mean, the current way that our board facilitates our meetings, it bars a lot of people from plausibly running for this office in many respects. So one way to alleviate that, especially if we have some concerns about evening meetings, is kind of loosening the remote participation requirement. I know there's some statutory requirements that we may have about how we vote, but I think that's something I would support looking into if and when that's covered in this path.
Yeah, so the items on our span page 11 and 12, and I also had that noted. I think, Member Hart and I have talked about this as well, just thinking about how you modernize the board so that it is easier for people who still have careers or who are raising families to be participants in their government. I think the remote capabilities that we've now seen working for 9 months really provide us an opportunity there. Next steps, I think, on that would be seeing what's permissible with OMA in the OMA as it operates when we're not in this emergency, and then seeing what we can change from there. But I would be supportive of looking at that as well. Before we go back, does anyone else have other comments or concerns about the remote, changing the rules for remote participation in a post-COVID kind of world? I think the only other item I wanted to throw out is having responsibilities on the members for when you are remoting in, making sure you're you have reliable internet, you're not on, wandering around somewhere, you're not operating a vehicle, those sorts of things. I think that would be a really good item to include, because it's what we require of our county staff, right? Like, our county staff has to go through and make sure they have reasonable working situation and that they're not, balancing childcare and their job at the same time. And I think it's only fair we're held to those same standards. Member Desart?
Thank you. I think you're addressing something that we can address later in the packet. I thought we were going to just move on to page 2.
We were, yeah, I just wanted to finish up that one part. Yep.
All right.
So if there's nothing else on page 1, let's start on page 2. I have one specific thing, but if anyone has anything else they want to draw on this page, we can start there. My only comment is under section 2, part C, where it discusses the legislative representation of the county. I know this is something that, I remember, you clarified it in your first legislative meeting. I was wondering if we might want to require this language to be on legislative agendas, the way we have the OMA reminder on there, just as a way to reinforce that sort of code of conduct issue. Does anyone else have other thoughts?
I don't think it addresses just the legislative committee. I think it addresses all of the county boards, so that it would have to be on the county board agenda, if that's what you're suggesting.
Okay, does anyone else have any other thoughts? I mean, I'm perfectly fine if we just don't do it, that's fine. I just wanted to bring it up for discussion. Okay, anything else on this page that you want to talk about before we move on to page 3?
Yeah, I'm going to be bringing up, because I'm an editor by trade, I'm going to bring up little editorial things too. Under number 2, B, representative of the county board, number 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, the 4th line down, it says chairman of the county board. That comma should be a semicolon. And
okay.
I mean, I had questioned pursuant up in A, the very top section A. The county clerk shall transmit by electronic means written notice and the agenda of a special call meeting pursuant to each member of the county board and the chairman, ... Pursuant means in accordance with. So I'm not sure that's the right word we want to put here.
Okay, thank you.
Take out pursuant and just have it read meeting, that the agenda of the special call meeting, will be sent to each member of the county board.
I think that's super helpful. And then just for expedience sake, if we have other grammatical things, it might be helpful if maybe we include those in track changes and send them over to Jason sort of over the next week.
That's a great idea.
Just so, Dawn, I don't want you to have to be like, oh yeah, we need a comma here the whole time, because I know you have much more productive things to add to that than that. But would that work for you?
I think if we go over this, page by page by page, it's going to take us more than, just 4 meetings to get through this rules package.
Yeah, and we can, the timeline can expand. So this is our probably most efficient timeline. And if we need to add, I think everyone's in agreement that we want to do a thorough job. So if that means more meetings, that's okay.
Yeah, I do. I'd rather do it right than quick. All right.
Agreed.
So that's all on page 2 that I had. Thank you.
All right, great. Anybody else? If not, we're going to go to page 3. Okay. Any comments on anything on page 3? Remember to start?
Thank you. Yeah, down to where it says H1, we've been pretty consistent throughout this document of saying he/she or him/her. It's been consistent throughout this document. And down under H1, the sentence that starts, if the chairman approves such ordinance, resolution, or motion, he/she, you'd add the /she, 10 business days with his/her, and then again on the next line, he/she, and then chairman should be capitalized. 30 business days of the boards, it should be apostrophe S, not S apostrophe. So that's page.
Okay.
Can
Yeah,
you scroll that back down, back up? I'm just printing I did my corrections, but I didn't print them and I can't see them from this computer.
No problem.
Yeah, so I'll be printing them in 1 second, just signing on. Okay, let me see.
All right, so then Jason, maybe let's just also note to make sure we look at the he, him, his, hers throughout the document, just to make sure we didn't miss any other, but that's a great catch.
Okay, yeah, okay, you can move it up a little bit. I'm gonna print my thing here.
Okay. Anybody else? Yeah, sorry, Member
Yeah.
Zay?
I did under E. It said presentation, preparation presentation. I know we always get into this where it says the county board, the chairman shall report no later than the first regularly scheduled county board meeting. Should we change that to second? That seems to be the time when we're getting that budget address. And it's always brought up during a county board meeting that the chairman's not following the rules. I mean, we
Okay.
set a schedule for that, but I would think it would just codify it by making it the second regularly scheduled county board meeting in September of each year would be a lot easier.
I don't have any objection to that. Let's, can our state's attorney research and make sure that that's not some statutorial requirement, but if it's not, I think that's a great idea.
Okay.
All right. Okay, any other comments on this page? All right, let's move on to page 4. I'm sure we want to discuss appointments, but is there anything else besides appointments on this page we want to talk about?
Oh yeah, I have that paragraph change, but like I said, I'm printing it. I didn't, because look, hold on a second, if I may, I'm sorry. Because
okay.
looking at the agenda, I wasn't sure what we were going to be talking about today. I thought we were going to be talking about maybe combining our committees. Because if we're going to combine committees, maybe we should do that before we actually go through all of the rules, because then we might be just taking sections out. I don't know, but anyway, so like I said, I'm printing that right now, but yeah, because with appointments, and maybe Jim, you might be able to help me out with this too before, but prior to Chairman Cronin coming on, didn't the board pick their assignments? The board members put their assignments together rather than the chairman?
Oh, sorry, this is appointments to other committees, not our assignments to committees. That's another
okay.
part. Yeah.
Okay. All right, sorry. I'm just
It's
waiting
okay.
to get to that part. Okay, thank you.
No problem. So for the appointments to other committees, so that's section I here. I know we've had some various discussion. So I don't know if we want to maybe discuss the forms that we are given and if we feel that that provides us enough information on these appointments or any other sort of conversation or concerns people may have. So like, for example, I think it would be helpful for us to develop an ethics form that gets included in these applications. There's some minimal ethics things in those appointments that we see. You know, if you've been convicted of a crime, you have to explain that. You have to indicate if you're an elected official in another capacity. I think there's obviously been discussion about when someone has given significant donations either to the chairman or a member of the board that has some connection about what the perceived message of that is, whether or not there's anything in reality that's untoward. I think as a board, we want to make sure that our residents know we're picking the most qualified, best people for these positions and not campaign donors, right? So I was thinking at some sort of ethics forum, we could look and see what our peer counties do for that sort of information. Is there any other comments that you want us to at least start researching? I don't think anyone has like, this is exactly how I want it done in my head, but any comments would be good.
Member Selman, yes. Member
Please.
Chaplin here. Yeah, I agree with the ethics form. I think that would be, nice to have in the packet going forward, just so people can see whether, talking with state's attorneys, people do have a right to donate to elected officials. But I do think for maybe transparency, to enhance our transparency, I think it might be nice to have the vendor ethics form in there.
So any other comments on this point? If not, I think that maybe our next step on this item would be to review what the collar counties, our peer counties do for their appointment process, what documentation is provided to the board for them to consider and vote on that appointment, and see what ideas we can get to that, and probably try to bring a draft back to this board. And then there's also, I think the state's attorney would need to be involved in that conversation to make sure that there's obviously a First Amendment right sort of thing in there where people are able to donate. But we just want to make sure that we're balancing that with transparency. So, all right, is there anything else on page 4 that anyone wanted to discuss? Okay. Anything on page 5? Yeah, member Desart?
Yeah, at the very last paragraph, the chairman may remove or suspend it should be at instead of his discretion. And then that paragraph as well, Jeff, has a his, her, he, she issue. So if you could go through that paragraph and make sure that every time it says he, there's a she as well. Thank you.
Great. All right, any more comments for page 5? I know, Liz, you just got your copy, so I'll give you a little second to flip through there. All right, if not, Liz, while you're still looking, we'll move on to 6, but if you have something on 5, that's totally fine too. Any comments on page 6?
Yeah, I was wondering about, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, member Desart.
I was wondering about the vice chairman of the county board. All it says is that person will fill in for the chairman in their absence to run a meeting. So I was just wondering, I'm just throwing this out there. Should we add more responsibilities to the vice chairman, or is this only a ceremonial title?
Okay, so why don't we look into the responsibilities of our collar counties, and then we can consider if any of those we think are appropriate. Would that be a good?
Yeah, I
Okay.
just, there should be more responsibilities, or otherwise it's just a ceremonial title with no responsibility other than filling in for the chair in their absence.
Yeah, and
Member Chaplin?
yeah, thank you. So, and I know Jim can go back on this too. So again, prior to Chairman Cronin coming on board, I think this has been changed maybe once or twice, but the vice chair was the senior most member of the majority party. It was a non-political position, and it was really to just take the place of the chairman when he was not available. In 2011, I understand the chairman had enough votes to change the rules to have this a voted on position, which made it very political. And I know that John Curran was Cronin's pick, and Jim Healy was running too. And so there was a kind of a lot of ruckus, and caused a little, I think, tension among the board members. And we saw that exact same thing happen this time with our vice chair, where the chairman was trying to pick the vice chair, and the vice chair is supposed to be working for the county board members. And so I think maybe going forward, we put that back to the vice chair is the senior most member, and then the chairman pro tem could be the senior most member of the minority party. But I really don't think, some of these rules were in place, a lot of the authority of the board was taken away in these rules. And I think we should give some of that authority back to the board. And that's also why I wanted to have these rules. I've been talking about it for a long time to go over, and maybe Jim can give a little more insight on how that vice chair worked in the past.
Well, I mean, in the past, it wasn't by political affiliation. It was just the senior most member. So, I mean, and it was more just a ceremonial spot, just in case the chairman wasn't there, the vice chairman would run a county board meeting. That was the extent of the responsibility for that. So, it was changed. Yeah, it was changed, when Chairman Cronin came in, and it can be political. I mean, the chairman's there. I mean, really, I was told a long time ago, it's the county board that runs the county board. I mean, the county board members. So, we have the authority, we vote on everything. So, I mean, that's up to the board members. Again, I don't want to go through what we went through the last time, but, again, that's up to our board and what they want to do.
Yeah, and I agree, Jim, the senior most member of the board, maybe that's how it was. That's maybe how it should go back, because, the last 2 times we've had this chairman, vice chairman thing, it's kind of caused a lot of, problems with the board. So it was never supposed to be that way. So I think, I'd maybe like to see that addition, or go back to the way it was, and maybe Cheryl might be able to get the wording, how it was prior to that change.
Okay, member Hart?
Thank you, Chair Solomon. Just to play devil's advocate here, if we want to give the board more power, having the situation that we have now where the board elects the vice chair is giving the board more power. If it's just a predetermined individual based on their level of seniority, that's not really giving the board the power to choose the vice chair. So I don't feel exceptionally strongly one way or the other, but if we're trying to empower the board, I think the current rule is probably more appropriate, but just my 2 cents.
Thank you. So I think on this item, follow-up will be looking at the roles that the vice chairs fill at the other boards to see if we are right-sized on responsibility, as well as the election or selection process. And then also getting the old language on how that was selected in our former rules before they were changed. And those will be what we review at our next meeting. Okay, so we've kind of moved on. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, member to start.
Yeah, I didn't want to move on just yet because I mean, I don't think that the right now the vice chair has no teeth at all. I don't remember calling member Zay in the last 2 years at all wearing the vice chair hat, right? So I'm not sure what responsibilities, member Zay, did you have as vice chair? What would you say the vice chair's responsibilities are? I just want to understand the position before we move on.
Well, I mean, like I had talked to member Chaplin about this a couple weeks ago. I mean, I was a little different because I was also vice chair of finance at the time. So I was getting information on finance and information as the vice chair of the county board. I mean, under these times, the role changed extremely last year when they could not get a hold of the chairman. We have emergency procurement. I would get calls saying, Don Carlson, listen, I tried to get a hold of the chairman, so-and-so vendor just released 100 laptops. Is it okay to do emergency procurement? I mean, that was a thing where I'd say, yeah, go ahead and do it. Again, it's difficult because the chairman is elected on his own, by the county, and we're elected by district. So, I mean, that's the issue that it is. I mean, it was more of around agendas. And like I said, I would be on the agenda for the county board and the agenda for finance. But as the vice chairman, it really didn't have a big role. I mean, that was more, like I said, I think I chaired 2 or 3 meetings. That was basically it. And you signed the resolutions. But besides that, there really isn't a huge responsibility because, we're one among equals. And, if we want to do a stronger vice chairman, I mean, we can, but then does that diminish the role of the other board members at that point?
Thank you for that. So do you see any rules that should be added to this rules rules document as long as we're going through it? Do you see any other rules for the vice chair that we should think about putting in here?
I really don't. I think it just makes an issue of, again, they're not if the vice chairman is not elected countywide and you're elected by the district. I mean, again, the vice chairman should be there to serve the county board members, not the chairman. I mean, that's the main thing. If there's discussion, I mean, that should be the go-between between the county board and the chairman. But again, I mean, most board members, if they have an issue, can pick up the phone and call the chairman anytime and, he'll talk to them.
So should that be put in here that one of the jobs of the vice chair is the intermediary between the chairman and the board? Because that's not in here right now.
I know it's not in there. I mean, we could put that in there, but I mean, Dawn, do you want somebody talking for you? I mean, I think you would rather, if you had an issue, you would email or call the chairman yourself. I mean, I would do the same. Yeah. I mean, you don't want to then, to go around the vice chairman, at that point. So
yeah, no, I would rather pick up the phone myself, but you brought it up. I thought, is this something you want to add? Okay.
No, I mean, I think it's fine. It's, again, I didn't, I think it's more of a ceremonial role. It has been since I've been here. And it's just been probably our best vice chairman was member Schroeder from Naperville. I mean, he was a stickler on the 3 minutes. I mean, I can guarantee you a public comment, he would cut people off. He had his timer, and I mean, he would say thank you, and he move on to the next person. I mean, that's what he did. But again, it's a role that's there, and it's in our rules. But I really think it's fine as it is.
Thank you.
All right, any more conversation on that? No. So I did want to talk about item D here, the chairman pro tem. So when we were doing our assignments this round, I had talked to Chairman Cronin about just indicating who the person would be if, worst case scenario, he and I both had COVID and no one could run the meeting. We wanted there to sort of be that consistency of, we know exactly who's on deck. The way the rules are right now is that the pro tem's only chosen in the actual event where Chairman Cronin and I are not there. I feel like it just leaves us open to not being as planned as we could be. So what I think it would be helpful to have this be an actual appointed role, that nothing about the role would change. You're still just the person on deck if chairman and vice chairman is gone. But I think having that established as part of the slate of candidates we put forward for the committee assignments just allows us to have a little bit more emergency planning. Does anyone have any other thoughts or concerns about item D there?
I do not, but I thought that was already the case, Ashley, because I thought Liz is the chairman pro tem.
So she's not technically, and that was the issue. So the reason, and I talked with Chairman Cronin about still including it on the list, so the sort of intent was there. But the way the rules read now, member chaplain would only be the pro tem if I was absent and the chairman was absent and we needed to run the meeting. The board would then vote for someone, and it was the intent that it would be member chaplain, but y'all could pick whoever you wanted. So what I think would be the advantage is that we'd be able to say specifically that's who that person is. Because I sort of think of member chaplain in that way. If there's things that I'm doing that I want to make sure she knows about, or if I were to be on vacation or something like that, I wanted to make sure we had a backup plan. I want that person to be sort of in the workflow that we already have of making sure that staff's communicating with the chairman, they're communicating with me, and that we can communicate with the pro tem.
Yeah. Oh, if I may.
Yeah, please, member chaplain.
Thank you. So that's why I said, like, in the board rules, maybe we have, like we said, that the vice chair and the chairman pro tem are the two most senior members of the board, or something like that. And that way it doesn't come, whatever, a political battle, or we don't have a chairman trying to pick who he wants to work with, or who he doesn't want to work with. And I think we end up having a more cohesive board. So I think it's a great idea because, like you said, with COVID and who knows what else going forward, in 2022, when these would probably take effect, I think that would be a great, we have a little, what do you call that, like succession line, or, making sure that we have everybody in place for if there is an emergency or something happens. I think it's a good idea.
So I think the next steps then are that we're going to add this as a more official role. I think that's a consensus, and the research is figuring out how that role is appointed on other boards so that we can consider that and determine how we want to do it for ours. Is that a good summary?
If I can jump in for a second.
Yeah, please, Mr. Echo.
Well, you need a provision in here that gives you flexibility, so if people you plan on being there aren't there, that the board can select from its members. Unless you're going to designate everyone 1 through 18 is, because you don't know who's going to miss a meeting or why they're going to miss a meeting. So at some point you got to be able to either have everybody 1 through 18 who's going to run the meeting, or you got to have the ability of the members that are present to elect somebody to run it. So if you want to make a chairman pro tem and designate a specific person, that's fine. But you got to eventually give the members who are present the ability to elect someone in case that person that you previously designated is not there.
State's Attorney Alfonso, I stand behind that as well. Just as a matter of rules construction, if you permanently elect the chairman pro tem at the beginning, you've thus taken away the ability of all the members to elect somebody during the meeting if there's an absence of all three. That's why the chairman and vice chairman in the rules are written as elected at the beginning, whereas the chairman pro tem is not written as elected until the absence occurs.
Okay, thank you. That's really helpful. Member Hart?
Yeah, not to beat a dead horse here, but I agree with what Member Eckhoff raised. I actually probably prefer the election from the board. I'm not opposed to identifying a chairman pro tem and having it as a set person, but as long as there's a line of succession, I'm good with that. The other thing I want to raise is that 2/3 of the board right now have equal seniority because we all came from either the 2018 or 2020 election cycle. And unless we rank everyone, and I'm not sure how we would do that effectively, I think that's going to create problems by designating it as the most senior member of the board. So I'd prefer that it's elected, but those are my comments.
Oh, and
Thank
just if
Yeah,
I might have
Member
finished,
Chapman.
so other boards, because this does happen on other boards where they do have the most senior member. And if you look at other boards, the most senior member would be, if 2 people are elected or 3 people are elected in the same term, it would be the person with the most number of votes. That's how they would determine the senior most member.
All right, so let's try to find comparable like methods for that too, I think, to back that up and
We-
make sure
we
that
could-
we're comparing.
We
Sorry,
could always
Member
go
Zink.
alphabetically. I mean, I think I'd be fine with that. And then since Grant and I have like 40 years of experience, I think you could probably choose a better person to take over instead of Grant and I.
Great, thank you, Member Zink.
Say.
All right, any
I
other?
have a question
Yeah.
for staff. In addition to our county board rules, do we have some type of emergency rules for the board to follow? Because I remember when I was on the city council meeting, we had, you know, if there's a disaster, what happens and who's in charge?
Yeah, so as far as the county board rules govern, but when there's a disaster, it's a disaster declaration and you have the COOP plan or continuity of operations. But, I mean, this is what's governing. I mean, the COOP plan is when there's that, I mean, it goes pretty far down if there's a disaster.
Yeah, I just wanted to make them aware of it because I thought that that plan was chairman first, if he's not around, he or she is not around, then vice chair, then chairman of finance, then chairman of JPS, and I don't know how much further it went down. Or it's the first guy who gets to the bunker in time, I don't know.
We got rid
Actually,
of the bunker, Grant. We filled that in.
Oh, yeah, I'll be the last one there.
I actually think that's really interesting, Member Rockoff, what you just said about the having like deciding like the chair of finance would be the next in line or chair of JPS. As we're discussing
Yeah,
you know,
that's a
how
good
we pick the vice chair, maybe that's something we
I
think
think we
of.
need to look at the continuity plan between.
Yeah.
Because it's already written.
All right, let's have that. Maybe Nick, can you and I have a call like early next week to talk about that and how we can get it on the agenda to review at this committee?
Absolutely. What I'll do is I will send the COOP plan to you and then we can schedule a call to discuss it.
All right, sounds perfect. Thank you. All right, anything else on page 7 before we move? Yep,
You know-
Member Chaplin?
Thank you. I'm sorry. And I was just going through my notes because I just got this all printed up. But if we can go back a page or two, I was looking at the chairman shall preside at all meetings. And if you go down to the bullet point where the county board, the chairman's to report, shall report to the county board on the affairs of the county and shall keep the county board fully advised as to the financial condition of the county and its future financial needs no less than quarterly.
Do you know
So
what page
I don't-
you're on? Sorry.
I'm on, no, because you know what, these are not really numbered, but let me see.
Oh.
I think I'm on page 1. It's under
Page 5.
chairman. It's page 4. I think it's page 4. 4 or 5. It's right under chairman shall preside at all meetings of the board at which he or she is present. And it's bullet point 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th down. So I don't know that we're necessarily getting those reports quarterly from the chairman. So do we want to strike this out of the minutes or out of the rules, or do we want to leave it in and maybe try to have this happen quarterly?
It's item Q, right? The report to the county board on fiscal conditions.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought we were getting quarterly updates from,
Yeah, the CFO does give those quarterly updates. It's not done by the chairman, but the CFO provides the quarterly updates.
and it's during the.
Right.
Yeah, it's usually during finance, I think he gives those.
Yeah. So then we should probably take this out of the county, out of the chairman's responsibilities. Just clean up the rules. If he's not going to do it, then let's take it out.
If
And
we
then-
had, sorry, Member Chaplin, if it says something like the chairman or his staff designee, because I do,
Sure.
okay. Okay,
Yeah.
so we'll think of that. Then go ahead on your next one.
And then the last one is, the next page is employee performance reviews. The chairman shall perform performance reviews and merit reviews of all county board senior staff, department heads, and department senior staff. The chairman shall send completed reviews to the chairs of staff member parent committee for comment, and any merit increases shall be sent to finance committee for concurrence. So I don't think that, I mean, I don't know, I chaired environmental, so I don't know, but I don't know if that's been happening or not. And again, part of this is to clean these up and get, extra worded, things out. If we're not doing this, maybe we should take it out, or we should amend it somehow. I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts on that.
Nick, do you know anything about if we're trying to meet that rule?
So the chairman does complete the evaluations of the department heads, and all the time that I've been here, I don't remember that it is provided on a routine basis. I think if there's a problem with a department head, the chairman will consult with the committee chair and they will do it concurrently. But for the most part, the chairman prepares it and then administers it.
So then maybe our next step, and then Member Chaplin, let me know if you have any additions. Nick, could you review this with the chairman and sort of get his perspective on the item? I'm sure there's,
Absolutely.
I would think there's probably hesitancy with why he wouldn't want to share. And I could certainly understand wanting our staff to still be private citizens in some ways. But I do think that if whatever's in our rules should match what we're actually doing. So if there's a reason not to do it, that's fine. Let's just get our rules updated. Does anyone have, yeah, Member Say?
Yeah, I did. Well, I mean, this is a good issue here because the committee chairmen deal more with those staff than the chairman does. You know what I mean? I mean, the finance chair is going to have more, I think, input with the finance people. Stormwater chairman is going to have more input with the stormwater director. Same thing with public works, the public works director. I think if we're going to do this, we should be advised if there's a problem. I mean, we should have some role on, if there's a problem with that staff member, or if they're evaluating it. I think that committee chair should have some say whatsoever in that, since they deal with them probably on a little more regular basis than the chairman does.
Okay, so maybe that we think about almost like a dual review process, because the positions do report up to the chairman, so it makes sense that the manager has, the final say, I guess, there. But I think that's a good point, that there should maybe be part of the performance review that comes from the chair. Member Hart?
Yeah, I was going to agree, but take a little bit different approach. I'm not necessarily sure that a committee chair should have a role in conducting that performance review. But I think if there is an issue with the performance of a given department head, then maybe that committee chair should be notified of such problem. I'd be comfortable with that type of clarification of the rule. I think that's probably more in line with how things are working.
Okay, so the next steps then on that item are to talk with the chairman to get his perspective. And then maybe Nick, if you think that maybe talking with department heads would be helpful. I want to sort of gather the perspectives, because I guess if I'm thinking I'm a department head, that might make me worried now that there's another cook in the kitchen while doing my performance reviews. And I might worry if maybe I get a chair that's not as engaged, am I going to get a bad review for something that's not my fault? So I want to be really thoughtful about this, but I want to make sure that the rules match what we actually do in practice. So thank you, Member Chaplin. Is there any more comments on that before we go back? No? Okay. So I think we were done through page 7. So let's go to page 8.
I was just going to add to page 7 before we move on.
Sure. Yeah, please go.
Section 4A2, the word to, TWO, should be spelled out.
Okay, great. All right, so then on page 8, the item that I had for section 5, it might just be more grammatical, but at the end where it says, you can't lobby without the consent of the majority of the board or the chairman. I read that to mean that the way our rules currently read, the chairman could call me up and say, please go lobby this on the behalf of the board, and that our rules would permit that. I don't think that's how we would actually want the world to be working. So I think that should probably be edited. Does others have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm concerned about how this is worded, that it says we can't lobby without the consent of a majority of the board or county board chairman. What does that look like? Is that in writing, or what is it? Because I mean, Member Krajewski and I met several times with Stephanie Kifowit and with Senator Holmes about animal rights issues. regarding state legislation. We met with them several times about from the Animal Services Committee perspective. And I never had express permission to do that from the chairman. I guess since it was part of the legislative, it's implied permission, but I'm just not sure. I mean, because Chairman Krajewski, Animal Services Chairman Krajewski and I then broke the rules because we never got anything in writing, or, you know what I'm saying? I'm saying it's very foggy. It's fuzzy. It doesn't clarify.
Yeah, no, I think that's very fair. Member Hart?
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. My interpretation of what this says, though, is that, you know, Member Dessart or Member Hart or Member Zay can't go lobby a member of the Illinois General Assembly and say that what we are conveying to that member is the will of the county board without the express, you know, consent of the board and the chairman. I think we're enabled to lobby for causes that we care deeply about, but, you know, if I'm going to call up my state senator, I'm not saying this is the will of the county board. It's more personalized than that. So I think it definitely needs clarification, but I'm not a lawyer, but that's my interpretation of what this says, because it does say in the name of the county or the county board.
Don't need to be a lawyer, but I am.
Yeah, Member Chaplin?
Thank you. So yeah, from what I understand, it has individuals. So if the county takes a position on something and as a board member, you feel an opposition of it, it's my understanding that as an individual, as Liz Chaplin, I can, you know, contact my legislator. And I might even be able to do it as Liz Chaplin County Board member, but I can't do it speaking on behalf of the board. If that's what I'm understanding. That's how I understand it, right? So, yeah, and I think we could clean it up just a little bit as well with the recommendations that were made. But yeah, I agree. So thank you.
Okay, so let's look at cleaning up the language so it's clear that, you know, the work that Member Dessart and Krajewski were doing, that's fully proper and something I think we expect of all our board members to be communicative with the elected officials above us. And looking at the without the consent of the majority or the county board chairman to make sure that's not saying, and again, I'm not saying the chairman would do this. We just have to sort of think of the worst case use for all these rules, right? That I think the worst case would be if the chairman, as these rules say, he could call one of us up and say, you're speaking for the board, go promote this. I feel our rules currently enable that, and I don't think that's our intent. So I think those are the two items we want to look at there. Is there anything else on this page that anyone wanted to discuss? Yeah, Member Dessart.
The seventh line up, it says, but in no case later that the last regularly scheduled county board meeting, it should be than instead of that.
Okay, great.
Member Dessart, could you say that one more time, just so I can get that note?
Yeah, the seventh line up, let me start at the beginning of the line. Regularly scheduled county board meeting, comma, but in no case later that the last regularly scheduled county board meeting. So instead of that, it should be than.
Which section is that?
It is at the very bottom, it's section B1, small a.
It's like right where your cursor is, Jason, on the screen. Is that, yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
Yep.
Awesome, thank you. Anything, oh, Member Chaplin?
Yes, and then I do have on this one, this is the appointment section. It says appointments following county board elections. Unless otherwise,
Yes.
now I believe that years ago, a long time, well, before, I think this rule was changed a couple of times too, and Cheryl or Jim may be able to weigh in too, but at one point, the county board picked their own committee assignments. So, you know, so I had changed the language to say appointments following the county board elections unless otherwise provided in these rules, committee chairman, vice chairman, and memberships shall be appointed from the membership of the county board upon a majority vote of the county board at the first meeting in December following each general election. So, because like I said, that was something that the county board had done before, and then it was changed. So I don't know if that's something.
I don't remember that being done before. Maybe Jim does, but when I got elected in 2002, Chairman Shulstrom made the appointments. And that was the end of it. We changed the rules so that if the chairman didn't, his selection or her selection weren't passed after 2 votes, then the board would pick.
Well, I got this information from member Krajewski, so I can double check with him, but
Yeah,
that was
no,
my understanding of the rule.
Been an ancient
No.
times or something.
yeah, the chairman's always picked the committees. The
Okay,
new rule was to, if he did not get a majority vote, then at some point, then the board would make their own selections.
okay, all right, thank you.
So then maybe just for a follow-up, this one, we look for any old language in an old version of the rules to see if there's anything we want to review there.
I read that somewhere in here. It's later in the packet, I think, because I did read it in this document.
Okay. I do think having sort of, just as a general rule, having gone through this process, I think having sort of 1 or 2 people as who is driving it, and then with the consent of the board versus having a starting point of it being all 18 members, I think that would be impossible. But yeah, I think making sure we review what we've done in the past and make sure we're updating properly, I think that's good. All right, anything else on page 8? No. I just want to sort of check in on time because I know our redistricting committee starts at 3. And I don't think we're going to get to the conversation yet about the committee restructuring, because that doesn't start till page 14. I think that's really something we want to discuss. So would we be okay with our second meeting is continuing this conversation of going through the rules, sort of just adding a second meeting and bumping the projected schedule out? Is everyone all right with that? So then it would bump our votes on actually the rule changes. Instead of being last February, 1st March, it'd be 1st March and 2nd March. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Okay, so Jason.
Yeah, I mean, Chairman Selman, I mean, I agree with Member Dessart. I mean, if we're going to do this, I think it's going to take a lot more than a few meetings. That, you know, if we're looking at substance, I know we've talked about, you know, if we're going to change meeting dates and, you know, committee, you know, change committees and committee times and give you more for committees, it's going to be a lot of discussion. I think a lot of discussion you have to talk to board members about too, just not this committee, that it's going to take a while if you're looking at doing a major restructuring of the rules on that, because I know people get frustrated when we don't have enough time to talk about topics and committees. And, you know, if we're talking about moving some to some night meetings, you know, how do we then, you know, do committee meetings on those days? So yeah, I think by extending this out, I think it would help a lot.
Great. Okay. I think that's a great idea. I think, you know, we started with that schedule, but I think there's never a bad time, that if there's more input and more conversation, then let's spend the time and do it properly. So for the next 20-ish minutes, good. Thank you.
I agree fully, and wanted to thank Member Zay for his comment, because I had to leave 2 meetings today, 2 committee meetings early today. I mean, I pride myself on my attendance, and I had to leave 2 meetings early today to make it to the next meeting. So, I mean, these discussions are very important. And to Member Zay's point, I would like to get feedback on the things that we propose from our other fellow board members before we, you know, just put it on a agenda for them to approve or not approve. So, thank you.
Great, thank you. So for the next 20-ish minutes, we'll keep going through this and we'll give a good stop time, because I know some of you are also on redistricting. And then our next meeting will be continuing on with reviewing this packet. Okay, so now what page were we on? We're on page 9, I believe. Is that right, or did I'm sorry, I think I got
Yeah,
that's
the page we're on. I think.
Okay. So number 2 under structure, for the technology committee, I know there's been discussion about adding the county clerk as a standing member of that committee, just because, like any office, there's a lot of technology. We want to make sure the clerk's views are represented. Is there any conversation, yay, nay, on that?
Yes, I totally support it. As the clerk said, she probably uses, with the election, sometimes more technology than a lot of departments. So I think it's absolutely imperative that we add the clerk to this committee.
I agree.
Okay, great. So I think we'll just consider that that's what we're doing. And I also wanted to, because I've noticed sometimes, you know, like Sheriff Mendrick's busy. He doesn't always send himself. He'll send Mr. Briggs, I think is his name. And so in here, it does say that the elected officials can designate a representative. Member Hart?
Yeah, not to bring us down here, but I'm fully supportive of the clerk participating in that committee. But my understanding of this section is that the chairman would, well, the board members, represented from each of the 6 districts, and then the chairman picks from that group of countywide elected officials. So none of those countywide elected officials right now are standing members of that committee. They're all selected each time that this committee is reviewed. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah, so I don't, it wouldn't make sense to have the clerk be the only countywide elected official that's a standing member of that committee if, it's just board members aside from that. So I don't know how we would change this to address that, but I don't think it's appropriate just to choose one countywide elected official and ignore the rest.
No, I think that's totally right. I hadn't read that as they're picked out of that batch. As the former chair of technology, do you see any issue with making those all standing members?
I don't.
Okay, yeah, I don't either.
Provided that they're good with it and.
Yeah, that they also are
Right.
interested in that. Okay,
Right.
so our follow-up here then I think would be to check in with the clerk's office if staff can help us there and make sure that Clerk Hesmer still wants to be on the committee. I'm sure that is the case, but just to be polite, let's go ahead and ask her. And then maybe we could also check in with the other, the clerk of the court, state's attorney, and see if they have any objection to being standing members rather than just picked out of that batch.
Is that gonna make 10 countywide elected
Yes.
officials on the committee? So you're gonna have 16 people on the committee, because I thought the idea was to have 6 county board and 6 county-wides. So that was even.
Does it have to be even?
Yeah.
Because there are others that are more unbalanced, aren't they? Sorry, Member Chaplin, if you had something.
Well,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, as a newly elected official, that this is the first that, the clerk now does elections. So it's a little bit more imperative now than before that the clerk is on the technology committee or has somebody from her staff on the technology committee. Prior to the clerk's election, Clerk Hesmer's election, the clerk's office didn't maybe use as much technology with because they didn't run the elections. But I think it really, she's asked that we include her on that. Maybe we have to talk to the chairman. But I don't see why we would prevent somebody that's asking to be on this committee because it's important to their department to be on it, to deny them or,
I'm just saying the first sentence says 6 county board members. And
Right. Well, we could strike that out. That's why we're going through these rules to change, strike, make corrections, deletions, and change them up. I put it to 7.
I think there was a reason for 6 and 6. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
So maybe,
I'm sure there's some countywide that don't want to be on the committee, but that's.
so maybe then another follow-up. I'll also ask Don Carlson if he remembers why it was 6 and 6. And I presume the idea is that the county board is who's in charge of the dollars and we want to make sure we have equal say. But I think there's other committees that are a little more imbalanced because we want to get all the right voices at the table. So I think it's just making that value decision about which is more valuable. Okay. Any other items or next items to discuss on page 9? Member Chaplin? Oh, no? Okay. The one item I want to discuss, I know it's been brought up a little bit, is about the legislative committee. I think if we were going to discuss whether or not it would be a committee of the whole, this is probably the part to discuss it in. I know there's been some discussion about whether it should temporarily be a committee of the whole just because of the times we're in and how dependent, intertwined we are more than ever with state and federal governments.
I'm sorry, what did you want to, Chairman?
It's so in section 2, if we were talking about structure, that is where I think we would indicate if we wanted legislative to be a committee of the whole. So that's why I just want to talk about it here. So the discussion is whether or not you want it to be a committee of the whole for 2 years, whether you think it's important to be a committee of the whole forever, or if we would just want to continue with the sort of model we have now, where if you, as a board member, of course, can attend any meeting where you have interest or something to express. So if anyone has any comments on that.
I don't have a clear side one way or the other, Chairwoman Selman. If it's a committee of the whole or stays the way it is, but I do intend as chairman of the legislative committee of having more and more speakers in lobbyists, our elected officials. In fact, on the 26th, next Tuesday, we're having Curran in and Conroy in, a Republican and a Democrat, to talk about what's going on in Springfield. And I invite all of the board members to join us. It's going to be a special call at 1 o'clock on Tuesday instead of the 9 o'clock time slot, because the 1 o'clock slot was what was available for them to come in and talk to us. So, I mean, I think it would be great to have all the board members come in and listen to what our elected officials have to say.
Okay, I'm hearing that you maybe don't think it needs to be a committee of the whole, but you, like any chairman, of course, want everyone to participate so we get sort of our best ideas. Is that a good summary?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any other strong opinions either way? It sounds like we don't want to make this a committee whole, and that's fine. I just wanted to make sure everyone's things get addressed.
Hi, this is Cheryl. Do you mind if I offer something real quick?
No, please do.
I think historically, and it doesn't happen very often, but it has happened. The reason that the legislative committee and some of the other verbiage says chairman of the county board or the chairman of the legislative committee is there are times when there's an hour committee posting and I have to make a decision on a bill, whether to support or oppose an amendment or something that's filed. So right now I can call Chair Desart and Chairman Cronin and get the sign off I need. A larger committee just becomes more problematic in just terms of trying to notify people. When Jim Healy was chair of legislative, we had a lot of big bills going through, and I was physically trying to call 6 members or 4 of the members within an hour to get decisions on stuff. It doesn't happen that often, but it does help for me to have a very clear, chain. It's the chair of legislative or the chairman of the county, because I think to Member Chaplin's earlier point, she can go down and lobby as, Liz Chaplin on any bill she wants to as Liz Chaplin, but as a county board member, as we kind of discussed, we strive for consensus. We're not going to always have it, let's face it, but we try for consensus, and you've got to have some focused priorities in the name of the DuPage County Board. So that's why it's set up the way it is.
Great, thank you so much. All right, does anyone have any other comments then on page 9? No, okay, and then doing just a little time check, I think let's finish page 10 and then that'll probably be about where we end off for the day. Does anyone have anything they want to start us off with on page 10?
I got the wrong page. Which page is page 10?
So we're talking about the vacancies is on there. It says 4 vacancies and then it has A, B, and C under it.
Mine must be, yeah.
I just noticed a bunch of typos, and I'm just going to call, instead of boring you guys with typos, I'll just call Jason maybe tomorrow. Is that okay, Jason, if I call you and go through it with you? All right, thank you.
Okay. The only item I had, so under vacancies, there doesn't seem to me there's actually a formal procedure for when you resign from a committee, if that is the case. And I think there should be, right? There should be a very specific, if you chair a committee and for some reason are resigning, I think there should be a process for that so that we know that it was done through the proper channels. Does anyone have any other thoughts on that or disagree with that, I guess? Okay, so maybe then the next step there is just looking at the collar counties to see what their procedure is for if you need to resign from a chair and making sure that we have some procedure for that. Does that sound good to the committee?
Yeah.
I was just gonna add one thing about.
Yes, please.
At the bottom of page 9, the top of page 10, how a county board member can be removed from a committee. I guess the finance committee does it, but then they can appeal to the county board. Well, the finance committee up above says it's made up of the entire county board, so it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me that the people who decided this Tuesday are supposed to be the ones that also decide the next Tuesday.
Okay, that's a fair point. So maybe just we can add that to our peer research. We're trying to see what the appeals process then would be for other counties and see what good ideas we can borrow from them. That's a great point. Okay. We'll give just a few minutes. Let's keep going a little bit. Page 11, do anybody have anything on page 11?
Which page is that?
Oh, it starts the top D, committee meeting minutes, and then goes to quorum. It's a little more turnkey. Yep, member Desart.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Starting on the bottom of page 10, you were talking about meeting times.
Mhm.
When I was discussing during legislative session last time about changing the time of legislative session, the legislative committee, because oftentimes finance goes over. So did we want to talk about meeting times in this section or not address meeting times? Because later it says the chairman decides the meeting times. Do we want the this body, this rules committee, to talk about meeting times, or do we want to or not talk about
Yeah,
it?
what I would suggest is I want to go through which committees we want to maintain first, and hopefully that'll be a shrunken list, and then talk about meeting times. I absolutely want to talk about meeting times. I think, as you mentioned in your comments earlier, today was a perfect example of how many of us had to leave meetings early or arrive late, and that's not the best way to do business.
Okay, so let's put this in the parking lot. I hate that, by the way. And that's back to this one, right? Okay.
I think that's great.
All right.
Okay, and then under section E for quorum, it's point 3 and 4. This goes back, member Hart, to what you were discussing earlier about needing sort of updated rules for when someone can be remote, and also discussing, I think, a code of conduct for members, that what being present means. Being present doesn't mean driving around in a car or operating machinery or having a bunch of people in the room having another meeting. It's they're focused. So we're going to look at, get some peer ideas for how they allow remote participation that's OMA compliant for non-COVID times. And then if any of them have codes of conduct for their members participating remotely, let's take a look at that, and then just sort of everyone keep their thinking caps on for what they would want to be included in those things if we don't have good examples. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Dawn.
Just to bring in experience from other governmental bodies, when I was on the IPSD 204 Board of Education, we allowed people to attend meetings remotely if they were either A, sick, or B, on a business trip for their other jobs. So just to give you an example of what other government.
That's exactly. If you happen to be able to find the rule book from that past board, we can look at that language too. I think that'd be really helpful.
I could look for it, sure, yeah.
Okay, and then just send it to me and Jason or whoever.
Yeah.
Yeah, member Chaplin?
I think, if I'm not mistaken, but maybe unless the rules changed, I think maybe at the Water Commission, was that in the rules too there, Jim, that they could do remote if they were sick or on a business trip?
They could do audio. At the time, they could call in. Yeah, right. They could call in, but it was only for business for their city if they were on that, not personal business.
Okay.
And we should also include military service. Wasn't Commissioner Wiley that he would be deployed sometimes and need to call. So I think we want to note that. And then we probably want to require video. Member Hart?
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll get some ideas as we look at their examples, so we can discuss it then. But in addition, I think we need to have some type of accommodation for working parents if there's a child care issue. I think that is a warranted excuse to participate remotely, in my opinion. So just my 2 cents.
I would agree there. I think I'm the only non-parent on the board. If I could just finish and then we'll call on you, Liz. I think it might also just be interesting to see if other counties provide childcare, and if so, what sort of the cost burden on that member is. But yeah, I think if we're talking about modernizing this board and making sure that as people are in different stages of their life, they can still serve their community if that's what they want to do. I think that's an area we should look at. I agree. Member Chaplin?
Yeah, maybe we can make it more broad, because some of us are dealing with
elders, of course,
that are almost sometimes as much work as a young child for some of us. I mean, so maybe
just family obligations,
a family leave excuse or something like that, or a family matter or something like that. Yeah,
we have staff
make it a little more broad.
We have staff wanting to jump in.
Chair Solomon,
not sure. And then to start after that, yes.
So you talked about electronic. there is an electronic section later on in 7H
Mhm.
that might be the proper place. I'm not, I mean, because that's exactly what you guys are talking about in H1 and 2 is how the electronic attendance works. I just wanted to point that out. I don't know if it's under forum or if it'd be under that one.
Oh, yeah, I see it under H here. Okay, yeah, so we'll just make sure we're consistent in both areas. And then member to start, did you have another comment?
I was just going to suggest that COVID and Zooming has changed the face of business, and many businesses will never go back to the way they once were. So I would make the remote participation as broad as we could. My only request is that staff look into what are the OMA rules. Are there any rules against meeting for any reason remotely or not meeting remotely? What other rules? Are there statutes? Are there laws on the books in Springfield? I don't know. So I'm wondering if they could look into that before we make our own rules. Otherwise,
yeah, absolutely.
we want.
There's
Yeah.
specific sections of the OMA dealing with remote attendance, and there's only 3 reasons that it allows remote attendance. And those reasons are personal illness, employment purposes, or the business of the public body that is remote attendance is required for the public body to be this business, and then a family or other emergency. I can send you all those sections of the OMA.
But we made our section more restrictive.
Okay, so then we're probably thinking if we want to match the restriction of the OMA and nothing further is, I think, the general consensus here. Okay, so oh, sorry, member Eckhoff, did you have another comment?
I was just gonna say, the only thing it's gonna add is illness. I mean,
Yeah.
elder care and babysitting, and although I know it's not babysitting if you're sitting your own kids, but anyway, things like that, I don't think the OMA is gonna allow for.
They do.
Okay. So I think we're at a pretty good place to stop. So that gets us through section E quorum here. So we'll resume on our next meeting with section F committee reports. Okay. All right, so let me pull my agenda back up here.
And so, and Chairman Sutton, I will not schedule a meeting to back up against yours next time.
Okay, that's all right. No worries. I thought we had enough time, but no, this is an awesome discussion.
I will do a night meeting. There
you go. Okay, so action items we've sort of gone through as we've had our discussion. I just want to check in with staff and make sure there's nothing that you don't know what we meant. So we've given you orders you can't execute on.
Member Solomon, the only thing that I think me and you can touch base on, I just want to talk about the schedule of what your anticipated dates are for us elongating it. But I think that's something me and you can discuss, and I don't know that it has to be all of us.
Yeah, I think that's good. You and I think let's either do a call late this week, early next week, whatever works for you guys. And we'll send out a fuller, let's probably add 2 more meetings to get the conversation, gather all the questions. So I think it'll probably take us more than 1 meeting to get through the rest of this. And then we can go back to sort of our original plan, but we'll send a fresh email with that schedule so you guys aren't trying to look at 6 different emails to figure out where you have to be.
Member Desart, me and you can talk tomorrow about grammatical and anything along those lines that you may have.
Excellent. Do you have a time that when you'd like me to call you?
How about I shoot you an email after this when I look at my calendar, and we'll go from there.
Thank you.
Perfect. All right, so that gets us through item 7, action items. Item 8 is new business. So if there's any new business you want to make sure we're talking about, go ahead. And then obviously, I know this is that sort of conversation that you'll have a really good idea in the shower in a few days. So please feel free to send me or Jason those sort of thoughts as they bubble up. And then we can just sort of add them to our agendas as we continue on. All right, so the next item is adjournment. Can I get a motion and a second, please?
So moved, Desart.
Second, Chaplin.
All right, and a roll call?
Desart,
Aye.
Eckhoff,
Aye.
Hart,
Aye.
Tillman,
Aye.
Zay,
Aye.
Chaplin.
Aye.
All right, thank you all so much. We're adjourned to February 2nd, and it'll be a 1 o'clock meeting, and you'll see an update of sort of the schedule so that we can readjust to make sure we continue this really good conversation. Thank you,
Great.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ashley.